Hello, everyone. I'm Alex Huggins from the Christian charity Faith in Later Life. And today it's my delight to have a conversation with Marion Shoard. I came across Marion at an event organised by the voluntary organisation Christians on Aging, whose work in many ways complements that of Faith in Later Life. Christians on Aging had asked Marion to work for them in 2004 when her 600-page book, A Survival Guide to Later Life, came out. Later, Marion returned as a trustee of Christians on Aging, soon after publishing an even larger handbook. And here it is, How to Handle Later Life, which also attracted rave reviews. For example, Third Age Matters, the magazine for members of the U3A, said there should be a copy in every library, council office, doctor's practice, MP's surgery, Citizens Advice Bureau, Age UK office, if not in every household. Marion, it's so lovely to have you with us. For those who don't yet know you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the journey that led you to focus on the world of older people? Were you always interested in the lives of older people? After all, you'd have only been around 50 when you started writing A Survival Guide to Later Life.
Yes, well, at that time, and that was 25 years ago now, Alex, I wasn't all that interested in the world of older people. I'd spent my working life in the environment field. And what actually happened was there was a bit of a change in the late 90s. I'd been writing, campaigning about issues like access to the countryside and countryside conservation and teaching in universities too for many years. And then I suddenly got pitched into a world of which I knew virtually nothing. My mother was living at home on her own, and she wasn't too well. She'd got, common ailments of later life like osteoarthritis and so on. She was losing her eyesight a bit, and she got a bit of dementia. And she was getting help in the home, hired help in the home, and everything seemed okay, and we'd visit often. And then suddenly she got a whole lot worse. And this was a time, I had my own life. My book, A Right to Roam, was just coming out. That's Rome, Roam, not Rome, the city. And 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 suddenly I was pitched in this world because she suddenly needed a lot more care. And suddenly I had to think, well, should I sort of completely change my life and go look after her? Or what? And social services were involved and they were urging me to place her in a care home. And so I looked at the possibility of being my mother's carer, but it wouldn't have worked out. I would have had to provide care night and day. And I couldn't make the sums add up too. So it was, and the house was just not very um, adaptable for that sort of life. So so suddenly, yes, I had to look for care homes, and I didn't know what to look for at first. I hot-footed it up to the University of Stirling to ask the director of the new Irish Murdoch Centre up there, how on earth you care for somebody with rapidly worsening dementia. And also, my mother was then losing her eyesight and nearly blind with macular degeneration, and she had other health problems. So it was all quite challenging. And it was quite difficult getting the information. I mean, Mary Marshall was very generous with her time, gave me what she knew. But back in Ramsgate, looking at care homes, it was difficult. I was on an uphill journey of figuring out what to look for and how to be sure that my mum would be looked after well. And she did actually go into a couple of care homes, and then she had a stroke and went into hospital in Margate and was there for, well, it wasn't planned that she'd be there for very long, but the consultant told me, you've got to find somewhere for your mother, got to get her out of this hospital bed, come back in a fortnight and tell me which care home she's going to. And he was quite intimidating, I must say.
Wow.
Anyway, I went back on many fortnights, and told him, no, I can't find anywhere that's suitable that
Mm,
would could really cope.
mm,
And so it was a big uphill journey. And I looked at homes that I thought were um, promising, and then things happened. I mean, for instance, one I went along in the afternoon. There was the manager dancing with the residents. It all looked absolutely hunky dory. And then I realized that once I'd left that I'd left a scarf behind, so I had to go back. And of course,
mm.
when I went back, it wasn't like that at all. There was a
Right.
long queue of residents in a sort of back room, all in their wheelchairs.
Mm,
It was all no member of staff to be seen, and they were all queuing to use the lavatory.
right.
It was grim.
Mm,
Another home too.
mm,
I insisted when I was interested in a home that I come back, or I asked whether I could come back and just sit and see how it was all, what it was like.
mm, mm.
And there it seemed very nice. And I talked to residents in the lounge and could see the staff were kind and so on. But one thing puzzled me. I thought there were more residents than this, so I asked where the others were. And one member of staff opened a door and showed me. And behind this door, there was a fairly small room, lots of people with dementia having their tea, food
Mm,
everywhere, um, young girls, barely out of school, I should think, trying to keep order. So you have to
mm,
be quite careful.
mm,
And anyway, what happened was, in the end, the hospital, the health authority said my mother could have a special form of NHS care called
mm.
NHS continuing healthcare, which is quite difficult to get, but her health needs were quite unpredictable and difficult.
Yeah.
And so she went to a freestanding NHS unit for people
Mm,
with long-term health conditions, like
mm.
particularly with dementia, and spent the
Great.
last 4.5 years of her life there.
Mm,
And then it was after that having this baptism of fire, I thought I must kind of try and share some of this, what
yeah.
I've discovered, with other people. And
Yeah.
that's how a survival guide to later life was born, which looked at, care homes, how to choose one, how to pay the bills, how to actually live in one
Yeah.
afterwards, and help for carers and social care and one or two other things. And then I, after my mother had died, it died in 2005. I was still very interested in this field
Mm,
and
mm,
sort of stepped back and looked at some of the choices people make about things like their choice of housing. And if they'd made wiser choices, maybe life could have been easier for
mm,
them. So, yeah, the survival
mm.
guide is a great big
Yeah.
brick of a book, but
It's
it does,
literally that.
yes,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
I think your experience is probably similar to many experiences of sons and daughters who have
yeah,
never perhaps understood anything about the healthcare sector or care homes or the needs of somebody who's advancing into later life with some health conditions. I think most people arrive at that point not really knowing what to do, and I can imagine it can be quite bewildering and quite distressing to actually work out, how do the systems work?
yeah.
What are other people doing and where are good places to go? So I love your diligence in helping to find your mum the best possible care. Even in the Bible, there's that part where Jesus is dying on the cross, and he remembers the care of his mother, even there, and sort of handing her to John and say, "This
Mm,
is, this is your mother, this is your son." And
yeah.
so it's we walk in the footsteps of Jesus when we provide good care for our
Well,
parents.
well, that's very reassuring. I mean, Alex, because I remember when my mother, she couldn't remember my name or
Mm.
what a daughter was, but she thought, I think, that I was her own mother.
Mm.
And she seemed, and I took comfort from that, because I think she thought, as I sat beside her, that I was some kind of comforting,
Yes.
well-meaning person.
Yes.
And so, yes, thank you for that.
Mm. I mean, at the end of the day, we talk about people living with dementia, perhaps not knowing who we are or not knowing our names, but we still help them to feel things. And you clearly helped your mother to feel safe and, as you say, comforted by your presence. Wonderful. Um, At that time, Marion, did you have much contact with churches? Had you thought about how any of this affects churches?
Well, not, I don't think at the time when my mother was alive that much, but after she died, I wanted to, help other older people. And so I was a pastoral visitor in a church I attended and set up indeed a pastoral committee because there wasn't one. And yeah, so I was doing that. Excuse me. But also, I think after both the survival guide and how to handle later life, I was quite keen because I'd seen how churches can behave towards older people. And I thought, actually, I think people in churches need a bit more information, particularly ministers, about the realities of later life. I mean, I think most of us are familiar with the fact that, of course, churches should be disabled friendly, but
Mm,
I wanted ministers to kind of take that seriously and understand why, and
mm,
and to have heard that. Lots of people in later life have sight impairment that can't be
mm,
corrected, and many are deaf, and lots of people can't, I think half of people over 85 can't rise unaided from a seat. So
mm,
there are reasons why you need seats with armrests and you
mm,
need disabled toilets and so on.
mm,
So I wanted them to understand that and be able to, not just use all that as a tick
mm,
list, a checklist. And also, of course, these people often visit older people in their own homes.
mm,
And I was very keen that they should understand, particularly about best way to just communicate sensitively with people with,
mm.
say, sight impairment, hearing impairment, Parkinson's disease, people who'd had a stroke, people
Yeah.
who got dementia. Um,
Mm,
and I mean, and it was born partly out of my own experience, I suppose. I remember when my mother was in the NHS unit, my brother and I paid for, out of my mother's estate, for somebody to go and visit every afternoon for 2 hours, and then family would visit at weekends. But I thought, well, I'll see if I can find a volunteer visitor, and I found one from a church organisation, and I happened to be there when he called, and he turned up, and he was very cheerful and sort of smiling, and said, "Oh, hello, Mrs. Short," and asked the sort of things that one might ask of somebody when you first meet them, like,
mm,
where did you live and how many children
mm.
have you got? And of course, my mother couldn't answer any of this,
No.
but she knew from the dynamics that she ought to know, that she ought to be
Mm,
able to respond, and
mm.
so she was in floods of tears. It was awful. And I thought, these people just need a little bit of information and
Yeah.
education.
Yeah,
And yeah,
absolutely. You're a woman after my own heart, and that's what we're talking about of faith in later life, helping people to be dementia informed so that we can be welcoming
yeah,
to people living with dementia and things like
yeah,
not asking questions that people can't
no,
answer is one of the key things,
basic.
rather
Yes,
to build
absolutely.
conversations around, something in the room or something that someone's
Yeah,
wearing or
yeah,
telling your
yeah,
own stories and all of that.
yeah.
So yeah, really important stuff. So, were you able to influence the churches you were connected with in some way, do you
Well,
think?
I gave talks at various theological colleges. That's
Mm,
that's the main way, I think. Sometimes talks at churches that were local,
yeah.
but yes, and I was also concerned that if these ministers going into people's homes, if there was they would know what elder abuse was and
Mm,
would know
mm,
what to do if they sense that there might be perhaps
mm.
somebody. I mean, older people are sitting ducks for financial abuse, of course,
Yeah, yeah.
in particular. So yeah, and so also that um, while it's not their job to give all advice about all sorts of things, if they saw somebody, say, a carer of an older person
Mm,
who was plainly struggling,
mm,
um, they could at least, point out that social services might be able to help them, because of
mm,
course social
mm.
services have got legal obligations to help them, and
Yeah.
also that these people were aware of the support in the voluntary world for
Mm,
carers.
mm,
I mean, I was talking to a carer not long ago who'd been a runner-up for a carers award. And went and talked to her, and she'd been a carer for various members of her family over a
Mm.
number of years and was aware of the financial benefit carers allowance. But she was completely unaware of what social services should be doing to help her. And she was unaware of the voluntary world and the way in which it can help in all sorts of ways.
Yeah.
So I think it's just useful
Yes.
if these people have some kind of basic knowledge.
Yeah. And yeah, knowing how to access the support systems. That's
Yes.
brilliant. One of the things that is something that we often hear about at Faith in Later Life is the extent of loneliness among many older people. And I just wondered, what would you say to some of our church champions who are looking to address this challenge? Um, what might they not have thought of before?
Wow. Well, that's a really important question because loneliness is a miserable state, and
Mm,
a lot of older people suffer some level of loneliness, and it can have all sorts of health um, um, implications and have cause all sorts of health problems too, physical health problems. Anyway, um, yes, I mean, I think your church champions would know why people do get lonely. I mean, a
mm,
lot of older people live alone or and are bereaved. Disability
mm,
is often, if people are housebound, can't get out. Also,
mm,
if they're a carer, for instance.
mm,
Um, but I think, I mean, at the moment, um, I mean, we live in a society that's been very lonelyanized, if you like, in that
mm,
all those encounters you'd have with another human being, you go out into town, into the bank in the old days, or into a
yeah.
shop, buy some clothes, and you'd have a conversation with somebody, a human
Mm,
being.
mm,
Now that doesn't happen to nearly the same extent. It's
mm,
excuse me, even to buy clothes, it can be self-service, or of
mm,
course people go online. So it's more lonely in that way, and also a lot of people drive. So if you live
mm,
on a, your next door neighbours, you may not see them because they drive off to work in the morning,
yeah.
and so on. Um, so and also, I suppose, the digital world, because a lot of older
Mm,
people don't do digital stuff. That also has been a major sort of way in which the world has changed for them, which they can find quite baffling and kind of
mm,
make them feel more isolated and lonely than they might otherwise have. So yeah, I mean, church champions would run, no doubt all sorts of groups for older people and so on. I mean, one thing they might not have thought of, which I only thought of a couple of days ago, really, was that I mean, my heart goes out to young people who are
mm,
lonely, and the
mm,
statistics show that it's actually the groups aged 16 to 24 who are more lonely even than older people,
mm,
and and also people in their later on in their 20s can often be lonely, and you can see why they are lonely too, because their world has been completely changed.
yeah.
It's hard to get a job. AI is taking jobs. When you apply for a job, often you never get a reply, and you're really
Mm,
just engaging with an avatar, not a human being. And then if you get a job, you may be in your 20s, you're perhaps in rented accommodation, a small room somewhere. Um, it may be virtual working, so you're working from home.
yeah.
You don't have the camaraderie of colleagues. You don't know if you're doing well at your work. You're not learning
Mm,
much about how to do the job
mm,
better. Very isolating.
yeah.
And then you think of relationships where, the idea of exclusive relationships is far less common these days. And,
Yeah.
you have these awful practices like ghosting, where somebody
Mm,
thinks they're getting on very well with somebody on a date,
yeah.
and then that person never contacts them again, and it's
Yeah.
considered uncool to get
Yeah.
back to them. So, in that sort of world, I mean, I thought, well, the thing about churches is often they have premises in town and
Mm,
suburban centres. How about trying to get both groups together?
mm,
Um, and how, the only rule really would be you're not allowed to have a mobile phone there. But the
Right.
idea is that you would try and get them to interact.
Mm.
And I find that often older people want to give in terms of skills and knowledge.
Mm.
I was talking to somebody the other day, and she said, "Well, I used to be a farmer, a mixed farm, so it's quite something to run a
Mm.
mixed farm."
Yeah.
She had, I think, 15 years' experience with the Scottish youth justice system, and she said, "And now I'm just somebody with a walking stick."
Mm.
But I'm sure people like that would
Mm.
like to,
Yeah.
engage with younger people and
Yes,
pass on
definitely.
knowledge and skills and life skills.
Yeah. And to
And
receive from the younger people too, some different
yes,
things. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. And sorry, yes, because the younger people could help with other things like
Mm.
digital stuff and
Yeah.
downloading the NHS app and
Yeah.
all sorts of things like that. So they could have discussions, about, I don't know, addressing the climate crisis or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah. And we're
yeah,
big
sorry.
fans of the whole intergenerational ministry scene.
Yeah,
And I think a lot of churches are trying to work out, what does it mean to be the family that God designed us to be, bringing
yeah,
together
yes,
generations. So yeah, it's a good point, and it would be a wonderful way through
yeah,
mentoring relationships, through social occasions,
yeah,
through just doing stuff together. That
yes,
both younger and older could have some of their loneliness
yeah,
needs met.
yeah. I think so. I mean, I'm not talking about I know you, your church champions are particularly interested in evangelizing and all that. I mean,
Mm,
I'm just talking about, and I think you'd put people off
mm.
if you suggested that these events or these get-togethers involved that, I mean,
Yes.
they're in churches. If people think, oh, this looks a nice place and the people are nice, they can, they can pursue that interest separately. But I
Mm.
think it's really about alleviating loneliness and helping people to
Yes.
live happier, more fulfilled lives,
Mm,
Alex.
mm,
So, I mean, that kind of thing might perhaps work. And if
yeah.
any people watching this do set up such a scheme, I'd love to know how
Yeah.
it goes. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. We
yeah.
sometimes
So,
ask questions about mentoring across the generations. So yeah, we'll see what comes out. What about
yeah,
people who are no longer able to get out of their homes or
yes,
who are living in care homes? That's a different
yes.
situation then, isn't it? It's not as easy to invite them to our churches or to our community
No.
centres.
Except that you can take people out, Um, I mean, I remember when I lived in Dorking in Surrey, where I was a pastoral visitor. I mean, I used to really enjoy it too, and rather than just go and visit somebody, and I hate the way with some pastoral visitors, you know. I don't know if this really happens, but I'm told that this is how training in one particular place when they're sort of told to visit somebody in their own home and tell them that they can only allow them a certain amount of time, which I think
Mm.
is not good. I mean,
No,
you
it's not a
should.
good way to arrive, is it? Hello, I'm going
No,
soon.
I know it's not, because how awful would you feel if
Mm.
you immediately know that
Yeah.
you're being treated like that? But I mean, I used to not only try and support these people. But also, I'd ask them, where would you like to go? And I mean, one lady I remember used to like going around the shop.
Mm.
So I'd push her around the shops in a wheelchair.
Mm.
That was her world. She loved
Yeah.
looking at what was new and the prices and
Yeah.
all that. And
Yeah.
other people, I'd just, take out in the park or just exploring or whatever.
Mm.
And I would also there take groups of them out in a minibus. I didn't
Mm.
drive. I've never driven, but I would
Okay.
organise it, and we wouldn't go to sort of things like garden centres or whatever. We'd go to, I mean, nature reserves,
Mm.
and we drive slowly, and particularly at
Mm.
bluebell time, say, and so the
Mm.
minibus would stop when there was a lovely spread of bluebells, and
Yes.
might get out and look at them. I mean,
Mm.
so those would be people who were housebound, but also some people who were mobile too. So
Mm.
I think, yes, think about taking people out.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think also pastoral visitors can often you get to know the person and you can perhaps see why they're getting a bit lonely. I mean,
Mm,
for instance, some people have always driven and then they have to give up their car, their
mm,
driving
mm,
license, and they haven't previously become familiar with the use of public
mm.
transport or taxis. And somehow,
Yeah.
when they give up using their car, particularly if maybe they've got a little bit of dementia, whatever, they can lose confidence and they say they don't get out.
Mm,
And so, churches could instruct people, and there would be somebody in the congregation who could,
mm.
just make them familiar with
Yeah.
local
Yeah.
bus services and
No, and I'm just thinking about, there are bound to be cases where actually bringing somebody out isn't possible or is no longer a
yeah,
feasible thing for them. And I always remember a dear friend of mine, um, she was advanced in years and wasn't able to come out anymore. She just loved it if I turned up with something different to eat. Or, if I was wearing something, or if I brought a puzzle she hadn't done before, or a crossword or a magazine that she hadn't seen before. So it's how can
yeah.
we, for those who can't be brought out for an outing, how can we help them to have a bit of an outing in their own home when we arrive?
Yeah, and also I suppose, Alex, there you think of carers. I mean,
Mm,
they can be tied to the house night and day. Um, it's just not
mm,
easy. And
mm,
if you can visit and perhaps sit with the person who's being cared for so that the person can go out,
mm.
um, or you can take out the person they are caring for. I mean, that can be um, very helpful, I think. I mean, it can be a lifeline, really.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Or even just to give the carer just an opportunity to go and have a nice bath, or to clear out that
yes,
drawer that they've been meaning to do forever and
yes,
couldn't do, or
yes,
write those birthday cards, or just have a lie on the bed,
yes,
whatever that
yes,
person needs. But yeah, to be an
yeah,
extra
oh,
pair of hands in that situation is
yes,
such a
because
blessing.
yeah, that's right. Because carers often are lonely, and it
Yeah,
can be a very lonely life. And
absolutely.
I,
They've
I remember hearing about one church in which they were encouraging people to contact family, the carer, and say, um, we'll come. We'd like to come for lunch, and we'll bring the lunch." Which
great. Yes, and we'll
great,
wash it up,
yes,
kind of thing. But yeah, they're just
yes,
little
yeah.
things, how to give somebody something
Well,
special
yes,
and to relieve them of something that's probably getting boring now, week
kind
after
of,
week.
yes,
So
yes,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
wonderful. Oh, that's some lovely ideas. Thank you, Marion.
That's
Um,
okay.
we've got this how to handle later life. I've got it here. It's so practical and honest about both the challenges and the opportunities of aging. I wonder if you would be willing to share a personal challenge that you've had to navigate during your 25-year involvement in the world for older people, and perhaps an unexpected gift or opportunity that later life has brought.
Um, well, the challenge, I guess. I mean, I do find it hard when I hear about or encounter um, really difficult situations. And, you know, I mean, for instance, and they just never go away. I mean,
Mm,
for instance, one lady I knew slightly, she'd moved. Her daughter had said would visit her in her own home some distance away. I don't think that far away. And the daughter said to her mother, "Look, come and live in our house with my
mm,
husband. You can have a granny flat here, and then
mm,
you'll be on hand." And this old lady moved, and then uh, and she sort of, you know, made friends in the local area a bit. And then when she was about 90, she went into hospital. And when she was ready to be to leave hospital, her daughter and son-in-law said, "You can't come back." So
Mm.
she was rendered homeless at the age of
Wow.
90.
Mm.
I mean, that kind of thing is just awful.
Yeah.
And and I come across families who place their loved ones in care homes and just never visit. And
Mm.
that's heartbreaking. It's
Yeah.
can be very hard. And so, yeah, I find all that quite. I mean, when during
Mm.
COVID, people would write to me about they're desperate to see their relatives
Mm.
in care homes, and I would write back and suggest ways of using the rules, the government rules on visiting
Mm.
but it was very hard, and I felt
Yeah.
for these people, and I wrote to the Care Quality Commission, the regulator, to urge them to make sure care homes were following the government
Mm.
rules, but I don't think much improved there. So it's
Mm.
those sort of situations,
Yeah. Yeah, and there are
I
often
find charity.
situations that you can't fix for someone. So, when you hear this story, you can't actually make it better. Of
Well,
course, we can pray for people, and we can pray for change and pray for peace in that situation. But nonetheless, there may be a period of time where we still have to watch it unfold, and it can be really
yeah.
heartbreaking. Yeah.
Well, you can still do what you can
Mm.
yourself, of course, and try and get other people to as well. But
Mm.
yeah, I mean, in terms of the pluses,
Mm.
I mean, as I get older, a great plus is having a grandson. So
Oh, that's special.
that's that's special, and sort of, being in touch with the younger generation and
Yeah.
discovering Harry Potter and that sort of thing. Um, so, but I mean, I suppose the sort of joy on the faces of some of these old people I've taken out and taken on outings,
Mm.
and that's been a huge plus for me.
Mm.
Yeah,
Mm. Yeah.
um,
So ministering
yeah,
to those older people in that sense, giving them that comfort and a bit of a fun time as well.
yes, yeah, especially the fun time. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I
Yeah.
mean, I've got a lot from from some of. I mean, they've been really interesting people,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Oh,
yes,
wonderful.
yeah.
Well, thank you, Marion, so much. As we finish, what would you say to a church champion who's listening to our conversation, who feels they're doing their best to meet the needs of older people in their midst, but wonders if it's really making a difference? How can we cheer them on?
Um, well, um, I think that they should sort of get talking to people, ask people
Mm.
what they might want to do,
Mm.
and and some things are sort of more obvious. I mean, I remember years ago when I lived in the Medway towns. I, I was talking to my daughter, and we thought, well, after Christmas, that period between Christmas and New Year, everything, lots of things are closed.
Mm.
There's nothing going on anywhere very much. The weather's often dreary, and so I used to play the piano at a church there, and I said, well, let's offer to throw a party.
Mm.
And we did, and we invited sort of wider church family
Mm.
and had lots of silly games. I think we asked people to come wearing a funny hat and that sort of
Right.
thing. And it was great. It was huge fun. And I mean, there are certain times of year when people are lonely or more
Mm.
likely to be
Mm.
lonely. And
Yeah.
so that sort of, I think, you know, I mean, just look
Mm.
around and see might
Mm.
be done.
Yeah.
I'm sure, but I'm sure your church champions are doing fantastic work, and they
Oh,
shouldn't.
yes. So certainly the ones who tell us about their work, they do a fantastic job meeting the needs of older people. And I think they also have a sense of purpose within that. But I think what you started with was right, was to actually talk to people and find out what they'd like to do, find out what they enjoy.
Yeah,
I speak with church leaders sometimes, and they say, "Oh, what do you think we should do for our older people?" And one of my stock answers is, "Why don't you ask them?"
that's
Because
right.
it will be different from context to context. Of course, food is always great, fun is always great,
Yeah.
But how exactly that's worked out will change from
Yeah.
one group of people to another. So yeah, ask them
Yeah.
and find
Yeah,
out.
that's right. And also be aware of new opportunities. I mean, these days there are these cinemas and theatres where they have relaxed performances where,
Mm,
it's okay to stand up in the middle of the performance and go to the loo, or
yeah.
people make a noise or whatever. And there's, usually provision for wheelchairs.
Mm,
I mean, the world has moved on in many ways. I mean, for
mm,
instance, I could go on forever about how public transport has got better as a result
mm,
of the Equality Act, and
mm.
how, it's great on trains. You get
Yes, we
ramps
can.
put down if you need help to get on, disabled toilets. I mean,
Yeah,
it's all good.
yeah.
Well, it's not
Yes,
completely
it's
all good, but
yeah, it's
generally
not all
speaking,
bad either. It's not all bad. That
absolutely. Well,
today's generation of older people will have some perks that previous generations of older people didn't have.
yes, yeah,
That being said, as we've already said, they're fighting the sort of digital exclusion element. But yeah,
yes,
it's about
that's it.
balance, isn't it? It's some good, some
Yeah,
bad. Oh,
yeah.
brilliant! Thank you so much, Marion. It's been really
Great pleasure,
lovely
Alex.
to chat
Lovely
and
to hear your thoughts too. And
ah.
yeah, I'd
Well, thank you for
go away and
taking the
think about them
time. And thank you
anytime.
if you've been listening to our conversation today. If you'd like to know more about Faith in Later Life's work to support churches in their seniors ministries, please connect with us on our website at faithinlaterlife.org. And on that website, you can also find out more about this book, How to Handle Later Life. God bless.